This is All of It on WNYC. I'm Alison Stewart. Adam Driver's a special kind of triple threat. He's inhabited roles in indie and edgy films like Frances Ha, Inside Llewellyn Davis, Black Klansman, for which he earned an Oscar nomination, and in theaters now as Jim Jarmusch's The Dead Don't Die. And then second, he's in one of the biggest commercial blockbuster franchises, part of the Star Wars juggernaut. I mean, there's an action figure and everything. And now the third part of Driver's balancing act is his stage work, for which he recently was nominated for a Tony. He is currently playing the grieving, drug-fueled restaurant manager Pale opposite Kerry Russell in the Michael Meyer revival of Lanford Wilson's Burn This. The play's limited engagement ends on July 14th, so get there. Adam Driver's in studio now. It's so nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
So Pale's entrance in the show has been much written about, and it is something. It's the intersection of like a Coke binge and this deep grief that he has. So when you were talking to the director, to Michael, about how you're going to come in and how you're going to inhabit this, what did you guys talk about to create those first few minutes?
I don't know. It kind of evolved since we started. It's hard to. I didn't catalog it that well, but it was mostly about what's happening beforehand and what it's really about. That he comes in yelling about someone that he just had a parking experience with, but it's really not about that at all. It's kind of it's all about Robbie. And what is it about this?
Robbie's his brother who's died.
And it's been a month since this funeral. And what is it about? Why did it take him so long to go? He's there to collect Robbie's things, and he was supposed to come sooner after the funeral, or they assumed that he would. And so what is it about? What happened in the month time since its funeral that Pale decided that tonight was the night to go get it? What in particular set him off to make him decide that he should take a trip into the city? So that's mostly what we talked about. And then it quickly evolved into technical things, of
like what?
Well, just making it make sense, and then the audience adds another layer to it, and the scene before is so different in temperature that making it all feel like a cohesive thing. So when he comes in, you still feel like Robbie. What does that do to the space? That's kind of all not really clear, but it wasn't really clear how we developed it over the few months.
Well, it's interesting because you're sort of pacing around a little bit, and it's interesting because part of the time your back's to the audience as you're having this sort of catharsis. You're just throwing it all out there, and I thought that was really interesting. It felt. I didn't feel like I was in a play. I felt like I was eavesdropping on somebody, like I just happened to be a fly on the wall.
Oh, good.
There's that sort of element to it.
Yeah, we also talked this, the idea of this bird caught in this cage of he doesn't know where he's going. The first thing he walks in and he sees a dance bar, and I think he has an idea of what it's going to be like, but needs to be drugged up to go face it. But then now he's actually in the room and he's trying to picture him and he can't. And I don't think that he's had time really. Similar to Anna, kind of saying that the family didn't give her space to grieve. I don't think that he's really found time to grieve, and until he gets in the room, and suddenly it comes out in a flood. But it's nothing that's premeditated. I don't think he was anticipating. I think he was just, I'm going to go in there and get his stuff and leave. And something about being in the space. He says he has this line that this place is haunted, or I'm trying to imagine him here, and he's picturing. He has all these lines about, okay, so what do you guys do? You guys eat here? Is this where you have parties? He thinks he knows him. Or the idea of him, but it's not till he gets into where he was, where he created Robbie, where Robbie created that I think it hits him harder than he's anticipating.
Before the show, there's music playing, and it's Till Tuesday, and it's the Bangles. Is it the same soundtrack every day?
Yeah,
every show, to kind of get the audience like, oh, it's the 80s, right?
Right,
yeah,
right.
It's the big hair, it's Flock of Seagulls. What about this play do you think needs to be in 1987? It's about love and grief, and those are sort of universal themes. But the play is 1987.
Right. Well, it was Lanford's AIDS play. It was written in a time Robbie dies suddenly of a boating accident, which was, obviously a metaphor for what was happening in the gay community at that time, or of suddenly these beautiful men gone, and all of that art that could be potentially created, gone. All that conversation, the love, the happiness, sad, it's all gone. And how do you not even compartmentalize, but how do you explain it? And how do you articulate that?
Yeah.
I think was very much of that time. How that resonates now, I think no one knows how to articulate that. And similar to kind of what I was saying, or Pale doesn't have an idea of what it is until he gets into the space. I don't think what's exciting about the play is they're talking about everything other than the thing, because they can't explain what that means to have. And Pale has this great line where he wasn't dark. He didn't bring darkness into the world. A lot of guys are dark, but he brought light. And of all the people to be gone, this one person who brought so much light to so many people is gone. How unexpectedly? How do you explain that? You can't. I think it just makes people animals, and grieve in a way that I feel like Anne isn't ready for until Pale comes into her world. And it's also a play about, it's about a lot of things. I hate to say that. But it's about one thing, but I also think it's testament to where Lanford was. I imagine about writing and process. You have all of these all of these creative people who are kind of stalled, and the one creative person who is actually doing it and getting credit for being this brilliant dancer is gone. Anna says all these lines about, what do I know about the world being in Highland Park? She hasn't created that thing yet, and you kind of get the feeling that she's on a precipice of doing it. Larry has this great line of well, is the work good? Well, then it doesn't matter. Then if the work is good, then, and Burton's a writer in this play. He plays her boyfriend, played by David Furr. He's a frustrated, screenwriter. He wants to write something epic, but he doesn't know how to. Pale is this composer who I feel gave it up to be a working class, restaurateur for 20 years. All these frustrated artists who, I feel like, are on the precipice of doing something great. And I think when the play is over, you hopefully get the sense that they're all off to go, now that they've lived life. And maybe that's what Lanford was trying to say, that you have to have experience and find something maybe in front of you that is different than you to love. And that maybe opens your imagination to... You have to go through heartache to create, or everything has to have meaning. All of these characters I'm monologuing, I'm sorry. They want to live big lives in order to feel something.
My guest is Adam Driver. He is currently in Burn This, which is at the Hudson Theater until July 14th. I'm so interested in the choices you make, because I listed all those different things that you do, all those different tones and flavors, and do they have anything in common, or what does a script need to have that you decide, I think this is something I'm going to spend 3 months, 6 months, a year on?
Well, it has to be well written, and I feel like compared to maybe a lot of plays that are written now, it's not filled with ideas that they're imposing on an audience. It's filled with characters that you feel like you just let's run. And if it's well written, then there's so much to find. We just finished our, I feel like 113th performance, and last night's show actually was that was the first time I think that second scene really worked, or the last scene really. And we've done, it's when it's well written, there's so many different ways that you can interpret it, given what you're dealing with that night, the audience, where you're at emotionally, where a technical thing suddenly makes sense to you, a line that you never thought of before suddenly rings true in a way that you haven't thought of until just now. I think that answers your question.
So the writing,
the writing,
it's all about the writing.
Is a shorter answer to say. Yeah, right. The writing, the end. And the people involved, the actors.
Because that's how you spend your time.
Yeah,
right?
every day. Yeah.
Can we talk about your charity for a minute?
Sure.
So this is, if you haven't seen Adam's TED Talk, go check it out. You joined the Marines after high school. You tried out for Juilliard, didn't work out. After September 11th, you joined the Marines. You had an injury, and you have decided now, or when you decided, to create a charity that intertwines acting and folks in the military, correct? Is that the way, am I describing it the right way?
Yeah, we expose the military audience to the best of the arts.
What is it you hope to accomplish by doing that?
Exposing a community who I feel like society and even the community itself has told won't understand arming that community with a new means of self-expression. That's what I kind of felt when I came out of the military, is I didn't have the language to articulate a feeling, and suddenly was at Juilliard reading these plays by these great writers who were articulating not only my life before the military, but my relationships with people in the military in a way that I didn't have the words for. And I noticed that suddenly, finally, having the words to label that thing, how much calmer I was. I was able to process things more by abstractly, and that the birth of theater was very much of a community that was at war all the time. The Greeks, Sophocles, Aeschylus, Euripides, are all military generals who wrote plays for a military community who was at war. As a way to process, grief, PTSD. I mean, we don't. It's not a therapy. It's not I don't want to tell an audience what it's about. But it's that community, for one reason or another, has been told that they won't understand a play, or at least that's the response that I got when I was trying to start it. That they'd rather see cheerleaders and fire guns, and that's all fine, but that they wouldn't. A play was too complex. And
What's the name of it?
Arts in the Armed Forces.
Adam Driver, thanks for coming by.
Thanks for having me.
You're listening to All of It on WNYC. I'm Alison Stewart. I'll meet you at the top of the hour.